Hi, everybody. Can you guys hear me? Hello, everybody. Can you guys hear me? Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right. So sorry. This is my first live. Okay. Now I can hear, I can see you guys. This is my first live session. I forgot to turn on my camera, to turn on my audio. So now I can see. I was wondering why nobody was talking to me. Hi, Olakunle, Charlie, Nana, Tasha, Business Mogul, Olukaide. Thank you guys for joining me. So now we can get started. I'm glad I got that sorted out. So let me get started here before. Hi, can you guys see me? Can you all see me? So you guys, this is special for me. Do you know why? This is the first time I'm doing a live on YouTube. So this is really, really special. And I'm so glad you guys showed up because I was nervous for a minute that you all wouldn't show up. But anyways, thank you guys for being here. Today is day one of our Break into Tech challenge. And I promise you this week is going to be absolutely amazing. So before I get into the training, can you guys let me know if you see me? You see me here? Awesome. Okay, I see a few. Perfect. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to put up the presentation so that way you guys can see the presentation. Do you guys see the presentation? All right. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started because I know everybody's busy and we're already 5 minutes into this. And I know some of you are watching this on your lunch break. So I want to make sure that this is worthwhile for you. So welcome to the Break into Tech Challenge. Today is day one of our challenge. And today we are going to be covering an introduction to IT basics. So I'm calling it IT Fundamentals 101 because the goal is to teach you just the basic things that you need to know about tech. The reason that I put this challenge together is because I get a lot of questions, guys. I get a lot of questions from people asking me, what is tech? How can I break into tech? I've never been in tech before. So I was like, as my end of year bonus freebie for everybody, because I'm not selling anything here, I'm going to do a 5-day challenge. And I'm even going to bring a guest speaker to make sure that everybody understands the basics and what they need to do to start a career in tech in any field, right? This is not really restricted to what I teach, which is audit and compliance. This could be any field that you are interested in moving into. So by being here today, you are getting a jump start on your tech career. So let's go ahead and see how many people in here, let me check how many people in here have some sort of experience with tech, or how many people here are newbies. I'm trying to get a feel for my audience here. How many people here are newbies? Let's see. I'm looking in the chat. So let me know your level of experience in the chat, and then we will go ahead and get into the presentation for today. All right. So let's see. I'm looking in the comment section. Someone, okay, newbie, someone said they have some experience. Okay, so I think everybody, regardless of what your experience level is, you are going to do good. You're going to hear some, you're going to get some good information here today that's going to really, really help you. So let's go ahead and get started with this. All right, so here's our agenda for today. Our agenda for today, we are going to start with a welcome. I'm going to let you know what this is all about. And then we're going to go into what is information technology. So for all of you that are new out there, what is information technology? Then we're going to go over some key terms and terminology, because that's what gets people kind of stuck sometimes. Because what happens is people, they are like, I heard this word and I don't know what it is. So we're going to get into what some of those key terms are. And then we're going to look into IT career options, because ultimately, one of the things I always want to talk about is when you go get educated or take training or upskill yourself, at the end of the day, you're not doing it just because you're doing it because you want to get a job, right? So it's very important for you to understand all these key terms. How does that translate into me getting a job? So we're going to cover that. And then we're going to look at a few required skills and tools of the trade, because we want to make sure that you know what it is that you need to obtain in order for you to get into the tech field. So if you're ready, let's go ahead with the welcome. All right. So again, welcome to the Break into Tech Challenge. over the next 5 days, you are going to learn a lot of things, right? And here's the schedule. For those of you that registered, you will have this schedule in your email as well as the workbook. So here's the schedule. Today, we're going to cover IT fundamentals, like I said, but you don't want to miss the remaining 4 days. Day 2, we're going to talk about how you navigate the job search process, because some people get training, but they still don't know how to navigate the job search process. So they're still unable to get a job. So that's what we'll be talking about tomorrow. On day 3, we're going to be talking about mastering the resume game, because at the end of the day, you can gain all the skills, acquire all the degrees. If your resume isn't put together the right way, you may not get a call back for an interview. And if you don't get a call back for an interview, then you don't get a job, right? So it's very important for us to know that there's a game at this, right? There's a way to master that resume game. We're going to cover that on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, we're going to talk about how to ace your interview. Again, remember, this is for different parts of tech. So make sure that when you listen to this, you figure out or you're thinking about how you're going to apply it to your career that you're interested in. And then on day 5, we're going to do a live Q&A. So all your questions, right? I'm thinking of doing a hot seat. So you guys let me know if you're interested. If you guys are here, I might select a few people that have been active throughout, and I'll actually do a hot seat coaching for you, where you come up, you tell me what your challenges have been in getting into tech, and then we'll coach you through that. And I have a special guest coming on Friday. This is okay, let me tell you who it is. It's going to be a professional resume writer. So they've worked in the tech field. They are a professional resume writer, meaning people pay them to put their resumes together. So she's going to be here with us on Friday, and the goal is for her to answer questions regarding resumes. And like I said, maybe a few people that might get the bonus. We might have hot seats where we actually review their resumes for them. So hopefully you guys are excited about all the information that you're going to learn over the next few days. All right. So make sure you join me here based on the schedule. There's a different timing for Tuesdays and Thursdays because I'm trying to catch people in different time zones, but make sure you join based on that timeline every day. And of course, I'm also going to send an email reminder so you don't forget. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's see here. Let's get started. So the first thing I want to cover today, guys, is what is information technology? And you guys hopefully are still seeing my screen. If at any time you are not seeing my screen, please let me know so that we can address that quickly. So what is information technology? Because again, a lot of you that are new, maybe you're from an accounting background, a non-tech background, that nothing that has to do with tech, and you're wondering what it is that I need to do to get into the tech field. Let's talk about the basics you need to know here. So here, let me go to the next slide here. One thing you need to know is that everybody interacts with IT in some form. So whether you feel like you've been a techie person, whether or you feel like you've never worked with tech before, I want you to know that you more than likely have been involved in the tech field. So let's take a look at individuals, right? One of the things is like, one example is your phone is essentially a computer. If you've worked with your phone, you've used the mobile applications on your phone, you've worked with technology before. Your personal computer that you use, or maybe your work computer, the different applications on your computer, or even your car, right? Cars are actually using a lot of tech these days. They're not just driving people from point A to point B. Cars are actually have computers in them. That's what you use for navigation, some self-driving cars. All of that is tech. So if you've interacted with any of this before, you've interacted with technology. Also, from a company perspective, so let's say you're already working, right? Companies use computers. There are computer applications that companies use, the company website, payment systems. Let's say you go to Walmart and you go to check out at Walmart. The POS systems that you are using to make a payment, they're computing systems, right? And there are other computing systems that organizations have. So when you take a look at this, you should then understand that you've been interacting with tech in some form. So based on that, I'm going to give you a definition of tech that I find very, very useful. So this is a definition that I really, really liked. When you think about information technology, the definition is that it's the use of computers, storage, networking, infrastructure, and other devices to create, process, store, secure, and exchange data. I know that's a mouthful, and we're going to break this down because for those that know me, I like to break things down in my teaching. But when you think of information technology, it's the use of computers, storage, networking, infrastructure, and other devices to create, process, store, secure, and exchange data. Okay, so think of this when you think of information technology, because it all boils down to data and what the system is being used for, right? So if you've used any system that's to create, process, store, or exchange data, you've worked or interacted with IT in some form. Now, I know people here are new, and that's the goal of this challenge. So a lot of these words might sound like, I do not understand what that means. And that's what I want to do here today on day one. I'm going to go ahead and give you an in-depth understanding of some of these definitions. So some of the keywords that I want to cover today so that you better understand what information technology is, those are the ones that I have bolded on the screen. So computers, storage, networking, and infrastructure. What do we mean by that? Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. And by doing that, what we're going to do is take a look at our terms and terminology. All right. If you guys are still here with me, let me know in the chat. Are you guys still following with me? Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at a few terms and terminology. And as we go through this, if any one of them finally get clear for you, please let us know in the chat because I want to make sure that everybody's engaged. All right, so let's start with two key terms first. We'll start with the simple ones. What is a computer? Yes, I know this might sound basic, but we are trying to cover a basic introduction here, so I have to define that. A computer is a machine that can be programmed to carry out logical operations or programs. That's simply what a computer is. So your phone is essentially a computer, your laptop or your tablet, they're computers because you can program them to carry out operations, right? You can program them to go to a website, to watch a YouTube video, to load up your an application for your bank, right? That is what a computer is. Okay, so are you guys tracking? So everybody probably has interacted with computers at some point. All right. Now, the other one, let's get a little bit deeper, is storage, right? So the definition of information technology said we use computers and we use storage, networking devices, and other infrastructure to create, process, store data, right? So we know what a computer is now. What is storage? And storage is simply any technology that's used to capture and retain digital data or information. So if you think about your phone, if you think about your laptop, you have a hard drive on your laptop, for example, or on your phone, you have storage. That's why when you've taken too many pictures, it might say memory is full, right? The storage is full because all the activities or all the data that you're generating on your side, on your computer needs to be stored somewhere. So when we talk about storage, right, at the individual personal level, on our phones, on our computers, you have that. Or even USB drives. They may not be used as often anymore, but USB drives, they are a form of storage. All right. Are you guys tracking? Okay, I see yeses. Awesome, awesome. So now you know what a computer is, right? That's the machine that's used to carry out logical operations. And you know the storage is where the data is actually stored. So the definition of information technology should hopefully be getting clearer for you now. So because in the definition, we're using computers, we're using storage, other networking devices, right, to store data. So once you understand these two terms, you're well on your way. All right. So now let's go to the next slide. And this one, it's going to be a little bit more technical, but that's okay. You guys are up for it. All right. So the next slide that we have. And first of all, let me make sure, are you guys still with me here? Are you guys still with me here? I want to make sure you guys are still with me. Okay. I think my slides are moving by themselves, but hopefully they're here. So the next one I want to cover is the network, because network was part of the definition. Okay. So again, network devices. What is a network? Because that's something that you'll see in the tech space. A network, you can think of it as the system of connected computing devices that can share resources and exchange data. Again, let me say that in simple terms, it's a system of connected devices that can share resources and exchange data. So you can think of in your home, for example, right? You have multiple family members with multiple devices. You all can be on like a family network. Or let's say if you're at work And if you're at work, you might be, your work would have a network where all the computers in the organization are actually connected. So when you think of the word network, just think of the word system of connected computing devices. They can share resources and they can exchange data. Now, when you think of devices, right, that's another keyword here. Network devices can include things like routers, switches, firewalls, wireless access points, and modems, right? There are many other network devices, but these are a few that you should be familiar with, depending on the area of tech you want to go into. But from a basic perspective, you should know this, right? Wireless access points, at least most of you should be familiar with that, because when you go out into a public space and you have your phone and you're trying to connect to the wireless network, you are more than likely connecting to a wireless access point. So you want to know, again, network devices include routers, switches, firewalls, wireless access points, and modems. All right. Now, networks as well. I want to talk a little bit more about networks. Networks can be classified based on the network size. What do I mean by that? That's what we're going to explain next. We have the LAN and we have the WAN. So the LAN is the local area network and the WAN is the wide area network. What is the difference between the two? The local area network is the connection of computers in a limited geographical area. So like I was saying before, your home, you have a network there if you have multiple devices. Or in your office, right? In your office building, you might have 100 people working in your office building. Everybody has a computer and they are connected, right? They're all connected to the printer so everybody can print. That forms a network. Or in a school, the whole school can also have a network. So you can categorize or classify the network based on the network size. And I just talked about the local area network. On the other hand, the wide area network is a connection over a larger area. So you can think about your city, state, or country, right? But even beyond that, so think about this. Your company that you're working for might have multiple offices in your location. What do I mean? In your city. So let's say you bank with Bank of America, for example, and they have multiple locations in your city. So in one Bank of America office, that would be the local area network. And then across all the offices in that region, for example, that could be the wide area network. So that's the difference between the local area network and the wide area network. The same goes for the school. One school would be on a local area network, and then when it's all the schools in a district in a particular city, they would be connected using a wide area network. And you could really, another easy way to think of the wide area network is potentially like the internet, right? Everybody can get on the internet. So big organizations, like I just gave the example for Bank of America, they would use the wide area network to connect their different offices. All the employees, some employees are in the offices, some employees are working remotely, they all get connected with the wide area network. Another way that you can classify or categorize networks is based on their what do I want to use here? Their accessibility, right? So what do I mean by accessibility? You have the intranet, the extranet, and the internet. So let's define that just a little bit more so that you're not confused. So have you ever, let's make this interactive with internet. Have you ever worked in a company? Let me come on camera here so you can see me just a little bit. So have you guys ever worked in a company where when you're on the internet, like you can only access certain applications at work. You cannot access them from home. Okay, let me see you in the chat. Ever worked somewhere where you're only able to work, where you're only able to access certain applications at work? You cannot access them at home. Okay, I see, yes. So if that's you, that's the intranet. The intranet is essentially, let me make the slides bigger so you can really see the slides. So the intranet is the network. It's controlled by an entity like an organization, and they determine what goes on in there. They determine how people can access that intranet. All right, I see Jiman. Jiman said, yep, in the hospital. Exactly. So you are on the intranet of an organization when you can access that within the framework that they've put together, which is typically within the organization. Now, the extranet is a little bit different. It's similar to the intranet because it's also controlled by an entity, but the difference is they have allowed specific access to some internet sites. So for example, let's say Jiman, because Jiman talked about a hospital, right? If you're in a hospital, they might have some vendors that need to access the internet, right? So the extranet is also controlled that way, so they can still access the specific applications they need from the hospital. They may not be able to get to all the parts of the hospital's network, but there will be parts of it that have been opened up for vendors to have access to. So that's how the extranet is also similar to the internet. All right. Or someone said a law firm. Exactly. Now the internet, which we all can get on, because that's how you all got on the on YouTube today. That's just the collection of networks that's publicly accessible. So YouTube, Google, my website, wherever you can go on the internet from anywhere, well, that's all on the internet. So whenever you hear the term internet, intranet, or extranet, now you know what that is. And again, I know I'm going through some terms here, and you might be wondering, what does this mean? That's okay. I'll explain it all when we get later on in the slides, because at the end of the day, these are key terms that you need to learn about so that when you get to the job search process, you know how to approach the job search process to get a job. That's what we're trying to do here at the end of the day. All right. So again, intranet controlled by an entity, accessible by people in that network. Extranet is also still controlled by the entity, but it has connections to specific external networks, people that they want to allow to access some of their systems. And then you have the internet, which is essentially the publicly accessible network that everybody can get to. So public websites and things like that. So now we just talked about networks. So if you joined here before this today when we started and you didn't know anything about IT, now you know a little bit more. Now you know the definition of IT, you know what computers are, you know what storage is, and now you know what a network is. So now you're not going to be what's the word? You won't be, I can't find the word I'm looking for. But now when you hear the word network, you should be able to figure out, and understand what it is they're talking about generally. All right. Now, the last key term that was in that definition that I want to cover is infrastructure. All right. And again, let me pause and see any questions so far. Any questions? If you guys have questions, please put them in the chat. If you guys have any questions, please put them in the chat. All right. Okay. So the next area that we're going to talk about is the infrastructure. The infrastructure is the framework that's supporting all the computing components, like the hardware, the software, the operating system, data centers. All of that is the infrastructure. All right. And I want you to think of this when you think about infrastructure. The infrastructure is really enabling a company to build and run its business systems. When companies are operating, they have systems that they need to operate, right? Companies need systems to operate. So you can think of the infrastructure as that framework that supports all the systems, all the computing components that they need to operate. So you think of the hardware, the software, the operating system, the network, all the data centers. Those are all part of the network and of the infrastructure. Another way to think about this is that, like I said earlier, companies have a lot of systems that they need to work together to run their business. So the infrastructure is the framework that supports all of these components. That's the way I want you to think about it. So now, based on that, let's break down or further define some of the pieces of that make up all the components of an infrastructure. The first one I want to talk about is the hardware. Okay, so the hardware, these are the physical systems. Okay, so can you guys still see the slides? Can you guys see the slides? If you can see the slides, please let me know. Can you all see the slides? If you guys can see the slides, let me know. It says it's kind of going in and out. Sorry about that. I'm pausing here just to see that you guys can see the slides. Yes, okay, thank you. All right. We'll make it work. I'm not sure what's happening, but if you guys have any issues with the slides, let me know, please. Okay? All right, so let's get back to the definition. We're talking about infrastructure, okay? So now we've defined infrastructure. Let's talk about hardware and software. What do those mean? Because we said it's a framework supporting hardware, software, and all those things. Well, when you talk about hardware, those are the physical systems. So the physical things that you can see, that you can touch, right? So those are the computers, the servers, routers, switches, like we talked about. And when it even comes to a computer, there's the internal hardware and the external hardware. So the internal hardware is the stuff inside the computer that you don't see every day, right? So the motherboard, the hard drive, the RAM. And then the external hardware, that's the stuff that you can actually see, your monitor, the keyboard, the printers. So all of that is the hardware, right? And the hardware is very important, right? So that's an important piece of the infrastructure. Another piece of the infrastructure that's important is the software, right? And the software, let me come here on screen. The software, these are the applications and the programs that are actually providing instructions, right, on the tasks that need to be completed by the computer system. So if you've used Microsoft Office before, SAP, Oracle, even the phone apps that you have, all those are the software because they are essentially the programs that are providing instructions on what needs to be done. So that's the difference between hardware and software. Hardware is the physical part, the physical pieces of the computer that you can see, whereas the software, those are the programs that are actually providing the instructions to the computer on what to do. So those are two key parts of the infrastructure. Let's take a look at the other parts. We also have the operating system and the data centers. Okay. So what do we mean by the operating system and the data center? The first one is the operating system. Now let's how many of you use Android here and how many of you use Apple? Let me see in the chat. Some of you use Apple, some of you iOS, and some of you are Android users. Those are different operating systems. And then from a corporate perspective, we have Windows, we have Unix, and we have some other ones. But essentially, when you think of the operating system, that's the software communicating with the hardware for other programs to run. So it's essentially the software, the brain, right, in the system that's communicating with the hardware, saying, okay, this is how you communicate with the programs. And you usually have what we call a GUI, or the graphical user interface, for users to interact with. So you'll see that the Windows GUI, the way Windows looks when you work with Windows, is a little bit different from the way a Mac iOS looks, right? Or Mac OS, I think is what they call it. So when you're on a Mac computer, the look and feel is different. When you're on Unix, the look and feel is different because they're different operating systems. They have different GUIs, but the way they are also communicating with the hardware and the other programs on how they can run on the hardware, they are all different. So when you're in the tech field, you may be working with one or more of this. Most people have worked with Windows because I think most personal computers are PCs. Even at work, most places have PCs. And then a lot of people also use Macs. So you would have like the Mac OS. And then for the administrators, they might also have systems that the organization is running on Unix, Linux, and other operating systems like that. So it's important for you to know that the operating system is kind of the software, the brain in the background that's having the hardware and the programs. It's telling or communicating how they need to work together. And then the last definition I want to cover here for infrastructure is the data center. So again, imagine big organizations. They have a lot of computing systems. They have a lot of hardware, network devices. So typically you will have a data center, or for smaller organizations, they might just have what we call a server room. But it's essentially just a physical space that's used to host all the computer infrastructure. So all the servers, the networking devices, all the hardware required to run the systems are hosted in data centers. Again, for smaller companies, they may have a what's it called? They may just have a server room as opposed to a data center. But at the end of the day, it is that physical space that's hosting everything. So let me summarize what we've covered here with infrastructure. So we've talked about infrastructure, and that's the framework supporting all the computing components like the hardware, the software, the operating system, the network, the data centers, and now you have all those definitions. You know that the hardware is the physical part of the system. Then the software, those are the applications and programs providing instructions. The operating system is the software that's communicating how the hardware will communicate with the other programs. And then you have the data centers, right? Or the server rooms, which are the physical spaces or the physical space that's used to host the computer infrastructure. All right. So you guys have learned a lot. So let's see here. So now you guys know what a computer is, you know what storage is, you know what the network is, and you also know what the infrastructure is. Before we go on, I do want to cover a few more terms before we go back to the definition of information technology so that you guys will feel comfortable that you really know what this is about. So let's keep going. A few other key terms that I want to cover: applications and databases, right? And this, you'll get this when we get to the career aspect later. But when you think of an application, most of you, again, are familiar with the apps on your phone. That's why they call them apps, because they're applications. But an application is a system, it's a program that's designed to carry out very specific tasks, okay? So that's why on your phone, you have an app for the calendar. You have an app for your email. You have an app for the clock, because an application is a program that's designed to carry out very specific tasks, right? And if you think about it from an organization's perspective, this can include applications used for payment processing. So they might have an app to process payments, or for financial bookkeeping, or for time reporting of employees. These are all applications. And you can see a few examples on the screen. We have SAP, Oracle Financials, PeopleSoft, JD Edwards. These are large organizational enterprise resource systems. Or you can have the point of sale applications, or like I mentioned, they might have some for time reporting for employees. So applications carry out very specific tasks, and these are very important in organizations because they have many tasks that need to be done. So that means they have several applications for each one of those tasks. Another key term that you want to know about is databases. Now, when you think of an application, the front end, you click the app on your phone or on your computer and you type all this information into it, it's being stored in a database. So you can think of a database as the organized collection of data that is stored. Databases typically store data in an organized way. All right. So data that's entered, like I said, in an application is typically stored in the database. But when it's presented in the application, it's pulled from that database, and the database might have multiple tables. So some examples of databases are Oracle, SQL, or MySQL, right? And the reason why I'm showing you all of these terms is later on, you'll see how there can be careers in any one of these areas that we've talked about. So if you're one of those people that have been wondering, how do I get into tech? Well, tech is not just one thing. Tech is made up of multiple things, as you saw in the definition, right? And so it's important for you to know what all those areas are so that you can determine what the best area for you is. So applications, again, just to summarize this slide, programs used to carry out specific tasks. And databases, that's where you have the organized collection of all the data being stored. So the data that you are entering in an application is typically stored in a database. All right. So let me see in the chat if we have any questions. If you have any questions, please let me know. All right. And now let's go to one of our last slides for the definitions, and then we'll be wrapping up this section, this part for the day, and then we'll move on to the career section. So the last set of terms that I want to talk about are cloud computing terms. So you can take a cloud computing class that will take several months, but I wanted to cover some of the key ones with you here again today so that you get familiar with some of the key things. All right. So the three terms that I want to cover here today are software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. Software as a service is the one that you guys most likely will have some experience with. But the software as a service is using the internet to deliver applications to users. That's the very simple way of thinking about it. So how many of you have used Dropbox before, or Microsoft Office, the new one, 365, right? Or maybe you've used Zoom, for example, right? Or WebEx to join a meeting. Let me see in the chat. So let's see how many of you have used any of these applications. Let me come here so that you guys can see me. So how many of you have used Dropbox, Zoom, Office 365, any of those applications? If you have, then you've used a software as a service application. Okay, so someone said our WebEx. Okay, great. Okay, someone said they have. Also, I see you guys there. So that's important to know that the reason these companies, the applications typically run on a browser, right? And these companies are providing a service to you, a software service to you that's on the internet. So, for example, with Microsoft 365 now, on the SaaS version, you can do it all from the internet, right? All the updates are applied on the internet. You don't have to install any specific application on your personal computer. You get access to it through the internet. So you have used a cloud service, if you want to call it that. So if you've used any one of this, then you've used a cloud service. More than likely, as an end user, you'll be using the software as a service. Now, I know some of you might be here and you're a little bit more technical. You might have used the other ones. So let's take a look at platform as a service and infrastructure as a service. All right. So, okay, I see the chat. Someone else said Zoom. And I see I have. Okay, perfect. So let's take a look at the platform as a service. Now, platform as a service, if you think about developers, when they want to develop applications, right, they may want to just focus on building the application without having to set up all the systems that need to go with it. All right. So a platform as a service is providing a platform for developers to use for building their applications without having to worry about all the other infrastructure, right? Remember, we talked about the infrastructure, hardware, software, operating system, right? Without having to set all of that up just because they want to build an app, developers can use a platform as a service that's providing them a platform that's already built and developed. And all they need to do is get into the system and start building their computer programs. So again, the platform as a service is providing a platform or a framework for developers to use for building their apps without having to set up the rest of the infrastructure or the rest of the platform that they need. And then the last piece, and examples of this would be like Google App Engine or AWS Elastic Beanstalk. Again, if you are not techie, you probably haven't used this before, but that's fine. I want you to be familiar with the term. All right. And then the last one is the infrastructure as a service. And so this is providing the cloud infrastructure services to enhance or to provide scalable and automated computing resources to customers. So if you guys have heard of Azure, if you've heard of AWS or the Google Compute Engine, this is all infrastructure as a service. So it essentially, in layman terms, it allows a customer that's using their service to have the same level of resources in their infrastructure, right? Without them having to manage the systems. Let me try and give you an example to make this make sense. So we talked about data centers, right? Companies can have their own data centers, or they can outsource it to like a cloud company, like to AWS. So if a company doesn't want to set up all the infrastructure in a data center themselves, they can go to a cloud environment. And what that allows them to do is they would know that all the infrastructure they need is being provided by this third party, for example, AWS. And all they need to do if they need more services or resources is they ask AWS to scale up or to scale down if they need fewer resources. All right. So the company that's providing the infrastructure as a service is technically managing these systems, but the organization that's buying those services has the flexibility to set it up the way that they want to. So infrastructure as a service is providing the whole infrastructure to a company so that they don't need to set it all up themselves for their systems to run. Now, I'm going to pause here and say all of these cloud terms may not make sense to you, except maybe the software as a service, but that's fine. You just need to be familiar with them so that when you start working on your specific tech career path, you already have some familiarity with them and you can determine if that's an area that you want to go deeper in. All right. So that's really what I wanted to share with you on that slide today. So now that we've covered all those, okay. Oh, let me go back. Now that we've covered all this, all right. So let me pause. Let me pause. Are you guys still with me? Because I know we just talked about a lot of terms. Are you guys still with me? Let me check with you guys. I'm checking in. Let me know in the chat if you're still with me. Okay. So let me see in the chat. So I'm a teacher, guys. I'm a teacher. So I need to test you and see what are some of the key terms that you learned about today. All right. I see. Yes, yes, yes. So awesome. What are some of the key terms that you learned about today? So let's see here. I see you, Stephen. Kende. Awesome. What are some of the key terms that you learned about today? Let's see. Great, great, great. All right. Awesome. All right, so Mariam, I see you learned about SaaS, PaaS, and infrastructure as a service. Awesome, great. What else did you guys learn? The infrastructure, okay. Great. Cloud, all right, good. Software, hardware, okay, awesome. So let's now take it back to the definition because I want to go back and explain why I broke down all those different terms for you guys. Going back to the definition of information technology, right? We said information technology uses computers, storage, networking, infrastructure, and other devices to create, process, store, secure, and exchange data. So now you should have a better understanding of what information technology is, because now you understand what a computer is, you understand what storage is, you know more about the network and the infrastructure, and you can see now that the tech field essentially means how all of these things work together to create, process, store, secure, and exchange data. So when you say you want to work in tech, you will be working in one of these areas. Do you guys get that? Okay, so I see, awesome. Felix, I see SaaS, PaaS, LAN one, awesome. Data centers, great. So you guys have learned a lot today. Now let's take it a little bit further, because at the end of the day, and I'm looking at I have another screen here if you see me looking to the side. At the end of the day, when you learn all these technical things, what are you guys trying to do in tech? You're trying to get a job. Okay, that's what you're trying to do at the end of the day. So let's take a look at IT career options, and you'll understand why I wanted to start with all those definitions, because that's kind of where you need to start before you move forward. All right, so let's take a look at this. Before we look at the career options, on the screen here, you'll see that I'm showing you all the things that we've talked about today. And guys, this is IT Fundamentals 101. We've not covered everything. I just covered some key areas. So we talked about the network, hardware, software, cloud computing, databases, applications, infrastructure, operating systems, software, data centers. Those are some of the key areas in information technology. What this means for you when you're going to work in the tech field is that you can have a career in any one of these areas. Okay, so when you ask someone, or when you sit down by yourself and you say, I want to start a career in tech, the very next question you should ask yourself is, what part of tech? Okay, because there are so many different areas. You cannot work in all the areas of tech, especially not at the same time, right? You need to have an area of specialization. So if you guys are getting that, let me know, because it's very, very important for you to know that tech is a very broad field. Tech is not a field. Let me see here. Tech is not a field where you just say, I'm working in tech and that's it. No, tech has many different components, and you have to first decide, what area do I need to work in? And so that's why I wanted to define those terms for you first, so that you can see that tech is vast and there are many things. Now, you don't need to know all of them in detail, but there are many areas for you to consider. So now, based on that, let me look here and go to the next slide. Look at just a few on the screen. Let me make this big so you all can see this. These are just a few, not all of them by any chance, just a few of the areas where you can work in tech. Are you overwhelmed yet? I hope not. So you can work in software development or programming. You can work in cybersecurity. You can work in technology, risk and compliance, data analysis, data science, project management, product management, cloud computing, quality assurance, networking, and I mean computer networks here, website development, the user UI UX, user interface, user experience, system administration, customer support. That's a role in tech. You could be in tech sales and marketing, technical writing for tech. Maybe you'll be writing about applications and how they work, instructional designer. So let's pause here and let me see in the chat. Do you guys see how many potential fields you can go into when you say you want to get into tech? There are many, many fields that you could potentially go into. All right. And now I want you to start thinking, what area might I be interested in, right? What speaks to me? Do I want to be a little bit more technical? Did I get interested when she was talking about cloud computing, software as a service, platform as a service, or infrastructure as a service? Or do I want to be more in cybersecurity? But here's the thing about cybersecurity. Even cybersecurity is a broad field, right? Ade, I'm going to put your comment up because this is exactly what I wanted to say. Even these fields are they have further subdivisions because cybersecurity is not just cybersecurity. You have different parts of cybersecurity, like cybersecurity audit and compliance is a part of cybersecurity, right? Software development and programming. What software? What kind of language or programming language do you want to learn? Right? Data science. Do you want to go into the machine learning aspect with AI? Right? There are so many different areas. System administration. What kind of system are we talking about? Windows, Unix, or specific applications? There are just so many, many different areas for you to consider. So the reason why I wanted to start here again today is I wanted you to see that there are so many different areas. Now, the goal is not for you to get overwhelmed. The goal is for you to know that there are many, many possibilities out there. So I'm not trying to overwhelm you with information on all these different fields, but you do need to know that there are many fields out there. And one of the key things that you need to do when you're getting started is to do some research. You can't get away from research. Now, I'm looking at the chat. I see Fabulous Z says cybersecurity, perfect. Someone says GRC, perfect. Someone said cloud. So in the chat, let me know what part of tech you are considering, right? So you may already know what area of tech you want to get into, and that's fine. Or maybe you don't know what area of tech you want to get into, but at least now you know some of the key terms. Plus, you also know some of the career options out there so that you can start your research. You can't get away from research, guys. Like, it's not, you can't just say, I want to start a career in tech today, and then tomorrow you've started a career in tech. You need to do a little bit of research to see what interests you. What's your background? Now, I'm not going to go into all of that today because that's why we have 5 days. I want to break this down day by day so that you guys can take actionable steps. All right. So tomorrow, when we come here, we're going to talk more about job search strategies. But now, when we come back here tomorrow and talk about job search strategies, it's going to be based on you having hopefully thought about what are some of these areas that you might be interested in. And I may have a bonus for you guys tomorrow. So let me not tell you what it is today, but I have done some research on some of these areas for you where you literally have to type out, what is this field about? What are the skills that are needed, right? Is it more technical or less technical? Do I need a college degree? Do I need to learn how to code? What is it that I may need to get into this field? That's the level of research you need to do. And I've done some for some of the fields. So that may be a bonus I share with you tomorrow if you're here live. So make sure you join me tomorrow if you're live. But the goal here again is just to show you the possibilities. It's not to overwhelm you. It's for you to know that you can get into tech. You just need to find the area that's right for you, because the area that's right for you might not be right for anybody else. But what is right for you, as long as it's paying well, let's go ahead and do it. All right, let's get into that field. So I'm looking at the field. Oh, okay, I'm looking at the chat here. Okay, someone wants cloud computing, perfect. Someone wants risk and compliance, GRC, perfect. Whatever area it is that you are interested in, you just need to know that and then do further research in that area. Now, before we wrap up, right, let's talk about some required skills, because sometimes, we live in a day and age where people might, I'm not saying people do this, where people might say, oh, you can just get in just like that. But the reality is you will require skills, because at the end of the day, companies are giving people jobs so that they can come perform a job function for them, because companies are in the business of making money. So they're not hiring people and paying them high salaries just because they say they're interested in tech. you have to come with skills. So let's take a look at some required skills at a general level that you may need to get into tech. So I have two skills here. Let me make this clear so you can see this. All right. So you have hard skills and you have soft skills. All right. Can you guys still see this? All right. So let's take a look at this. Regardless of the area that you choose to pursue, you will need at least two sets of skills. I'm categorizing them into two. You have the hard skills and the soft skills. Hard skills are the skills that are based on job specific tasks that you need to do, right? So this is expertise that you have to tackle job specific tasks. So for example, if the task is around coding, well, you'll need the skill on how to code in the relevant programming language, or how to develop a website, or how to secure the network, or the networking administration or system administration, cloud computing, security testing, or IT controls testing for those of you that are interested in GRC. These are hard skills that you will need to perform the job. So again, based on the area that you're interested in going into, you need to identify what are the skills that I need to acquire in order to do this job. Because being able to do the job and to perform those tasks based on the hard skills is the reason why companies will employ you. Companies won't employ you just because you want a job with them to get into tech. They'll employ you because you're able to offer your skills to them as a service. And so they're paying you for the skills you bring to the table. In addition to the hard skills, you also have soft skills. So these are what I call interpersonal skills, right? So these are skills that are based on something that you learn or that you just have within you. So one is communication. You always have to talk to people, send emails to people, right? So you have the interpersonal skills there with communication, or project management, being very organized, or teamwork, right? Working well with people, analytical problem solving skills, or leadership skills. You're someone that can take charge and help people get a project done. Or maybe it's creativity, if you're maybe in an area that needs you to be creative, maybe with UI UX, for example. Task and time management, for example, or even emotional intelligence. That is becoming more and more important in the workspace. When you're working with people in the workspace, everybody has different personalities, different reasons why they're working. So you have to be able to manage your emotions well, right? So that you can work effectively with people. So because you're working in tech doesn't mean you only need hard skills. You need the hard skills to do the job, but you need the soft skills to work well with people and be effective in doing your job. So whatever role you go for, whatever field in tech you choose to go for, you always have to consider, what hard skills do I need in this field and what soft skills do I need to make sure that I can effectively perform my job function. All right. And then let's keep going. Let's go to the next slide. I also want to cover tools of the trade because I'm looking at the time here and we're running up on time. So in addition to those skills, you need certain tools. Okay. So let me just break down some of the tools here for you today. So there are three, I categorize this into three areas. So the first one is tools specific to the job area. So again, depending on the technical skills, right, you will need tools for that area. So whatever programming language tools you need, you'll need that. Or if you're in the project management space, maybe Jira or something like that, you'll need tools there. Or for those of you that said you're interested in GRC, you'll need to know how to use audit management tools. So you have to consider the area you're interested in going into, and then you'll be able to see, okay, what tools are in that space that I need? So you'll need to get those tools, all right? And then the other area is business productivity tools. So you would need to know Microsoft Office. Most companies use Microsoft. So you might need to know how to use the Outlook, Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Visio. These are all productivity tools that companies use. So you want to be familiar with them. So even though you're working in tech, you still need to type an email on Outlook, right? You might need to put information in an Excel spreadsheet or put a presentation together. Those are all tools that you want to gain experience with. Or if you're using Google, some companies use the Google Workspace. So you will need familiarity with the Google Workspace tools like Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, similar to the Microsoft Office products, but at least you need to know how to use those productivity tools. And other tools you also need to learn how to use are meeting tools, Zoom, WebEx, Microsoft Teams is becoming more and more popular in companies these days, or even GoToMeeting. So whatever tool a company says they're using for their meetings, you want to make sure that you're familiar with it so that you can effectively use it while in the workspace. So again, the reason I'm breaking this down for you is so that you don't think that because you're working in tech, you only need to know certain tech elements or have tech skills or just know some tech tools. You need to have tools that will make you an effective employee across the board, right? What do I mean by that? You need to have tools that you will be able to say, okay, I can do my job with whatever tool I need, the technical tool I need, or I can effectively communicate with my team on, using Microsoft Outlook. I can put a presentation together. Or another option is I can attend meetings. You can actually use Microsoft Teams or other tools like that to communicate with your teams. All right. So in order for you to know all these tools, of course, you first of all need to know what area you're interested in, and then you identify the tools specific to that area. Okay. So let's go over a summary of what we've learned here. All right. Are you guys still seeing my screen? All right. So again, today we've covered a few topics, right? We talked about the definition of information technology. And you got to see that, first of all, everybody interacts with IT in some way, right? Whether you're an individual or you work for a company. And information technology really is you have the computers, you have the network, storage, and infrastructure all working together to process, store, create data. And we went into the definitions of the different aspects, right? We talked about computers, we talked about storage, we talked about the network, we talked about infrastructure on the network. On the network, we talked about LAN, we talked about WAN, we talked about devices on the network, right? Intranet, extranet, internet. And then with the infrastructure, we talked about the hardware, we talked about the software, we talked about operating system and the data center. All key terms that you should get familiar with, because that would help you as you go down your path in the IT field. And then we talked about some required skills. The fact that you're working in tech doesn't mean you're only working with computers, you're working with humans too. So you need to know about the technical. You need to have technical skills, which are the hard skills, but you also need the soft skills in order to be effective in doing your job. And the tools of the trade will depend on the field that you're going into. So for example, you'll have the technical tools, you have the business productivity tools, and you'll have the meeting tools as well. All right. So that's really what I wanted to cover today. So what I want to do, so first of all, before we get into the Q&A, have you guys learned something here today? Because I want to always make sure that when people are here that I'm learning with you. All right. I see one question. So if you guys have questions, I know I said it was just an hour, but if you have time, just hang on for about 10 minutes so that I can answer questions here. But before we get into Q&A, please don't forget to join tomorrow. So today was just giving you guys that basic understanding for everyone that wanted to get into tech. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about job search strategies. I always tell my students, I don't want professional students. I want students that go out there, take the knowledge they've learned to get a job. So tomorrow we're going to talk about the strategies that you can use during the job search process to ensure or to help you get better results. And it's very much linked to the career options that we talked about today. And like I said, I might have a bonus for you. So make sure you're here tomorrow. All right, so let's take a look at a question that I got here. So Adams is asking, do you need to have to, do I need to have certificates in project management for a career in IT audit? So no, you do not. You do not need to have a career certificate in project management for IT audit. So what you'll need to do is you'll need to get a better understanding of what is the IT audit field all about? What are the required skills in that space? And then you'll be able to say, okay, how can I acquire those skills so that I can go out there and get a job in that field? And we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves because tomorrow, that's what we're going to cover. So we're going to take a look at how do you break down a job role, right? To figure out what you need to approach the job search process. So make sure you join me for that tomorrow. And I see, yes. So thank you. You guys are telling me that you learned something here today. So that's excellent. Now, do you have questions for me? I'm here for you guys for the next few minutes. What questions do you have for me? Because I want to answer those questions before we wrap up for the day, because we're coming up on the hour mark here. So what questions do you guys have for me today? Let me check in the chat. And what I'm going to do tomorrow to probably make this a little bit more efficient is I'm going to probably, when I send the email out in the morning, so if you're not registered for this workshop, I'm going to leave the link. I think the link is on my community for the YouTube channel to register, because that's how you're going to get the workbook. So for those of you here today, they got a workbook that they can type into to take notes, and they'll get the bonuses, because that's how I can also distribute the bonuses. So there'll be some bonuses that I'm for you if you come here tomorrow, because I want you to see how to break down different job roles so that you can then figure out how you go out there and apply or look for jobs in that particular job role. I'm not seeing any questions. So that tells me that you guys are good here today. Any questions, guys? Any questions? Okay. So, well, if you still have questions, you can go ahead and ask, but I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping up for the day. So I think I've talked about this already. So join tomorrow. Tomorrow is 9:30 a.m. Central. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, the time is a little bit different because I'm trying to get different time zones for different people. So try and join tomorrow, but it's 9:30 a.m. Central, and you don't want to miss that. We're going to talk about job search strategies. So someone is asking a question. You're taking the Security Plus in 3 weeks and techniques to better absorb the knowledge and prepare for the exam. You know what, Business Mogul? So I have someone on my team that's on. So remind me to do this. So I actually have on my blog I think I can't remember what I call it, but essentially it's a guide on how to prepare for certifications, how to prepare for certifications. So what I'm going to do, so please remind me, I'm going to put it in or you can leave a comment for me so I'll remember to put this in the description. So I'm going to put a description, a link in the description that goes to an article that I wrote on how you can pass your certification exams. Because guess what? Okay, I'm not bragging or anything. I passed all my certification exams on my first try. And that's not because I'm smart, it's because I follow a process, right? So you really have to make sure you're following the process before you go into that exam hall. So what I'm going to do is at the end of this stream, I'm going to, in the description box, I'm going to add a link to that blog post on how to prepare for certification exams. All right. There was another question here. Do I need both TIA Security Plus and CISA to begin in IT audit? You do not need those to get started. And what I'll also do is I think I have a link on an IT audit career guide and some things that you need to get started. So that's another thing I'll go ahead and add to the description. Okay. So remind me. So I have someone on my team that's on the call. So please remind me after the call to go and add those to the description. So what you guys want to do is after we finish this call, once it will take a few minutes for YouTube to put it on the site, and it will take maybe a little bit for me to put the links. So come back and watch the video and check the description section. I'll put the links that I just talked about. All right. Let me see here. Okay, so I think we don't have any other questions. So now let me ask you guys a question. So are you now do you now see the opportunities for you in tech? Did you see the IT career options? Do you see the opportunities for you in tech? I want you guys to let me know if you see the opportunities, because that's the first part. Once you see the opportunities for you in tech, then it's easy for you to take the next step, which is doing some research and applying some basic job search strategies in order to get a job. All right, I see yes, yes, yes. Awesome, awesome. Now I got this is a great question here. This is a great question. So someone just asked, do you need a college degree and tech background for tech? Not necessarily. And that's where we're going to talk about this tomorrow, because I don't want to take too much of your time. If you remember when I showed you the career options, we had some customer service roles, we had some tech roles. So you don't need a college degree for all tech roles. Now, some of them you do need a college degree. I'm not going to be one of those people that lie to you just because I want you to feel good. Some tech degrees, you absolutely need a college degree, but some of them you don't. And that's where I say the first part is understanding, what area do I want to go into, and then researching what do I need for that field. And some fields, they may need a college degree, but they don't need a tech degree. So for example, for my audit and compliance folks, They need, usually a college degree is preferable, right? But it does not have to be a computer science degree. It does not have to be a cybersecurity degree. It doesn't have to be a tech degree. Sometimes they just want to see that you have a degree. So that's what you'll find out when you do a little bit more research into the area that you're interested in. So some tech fields require no degree at all. Some don't require tech specific degrees, and some may require degrees. It all depends on the area that you are interested in. So you'll need to look into that. But for audit, for those of you here that are interested in audit, you do not need a tech degree. And as you can see, coding is not required from all the roles. I shared multiple roles. Let me see if I can go back here. I shared multiple roles, right? So if you guys remember, I shared multiple roles on the screen. Hopefully you can see that better. And so across the board, coding is not involved in everything. You don't need to code to do project management. You don't need to code for risk and compliance or audit. You don't need to code for customer support, right? Or technical sales. So you just need to say, okay, what skills do I already have? Right. And we're going into tomorrow's teaching. I think I'll stop here. But what skills do I have and how does it line up with the area that I'm interested in going into? So hopefully that helps you. All right. Let me see. And Randy said, what if you do not have any background in tech? So Randy, I'm not sure when you joined us, but at the beginning of this, I covered an introduction to tech and some basic concepts. Now, whether or not you have a background in tech really depends on the area you're trying to get into. So one of the key things I want to leave with you here today, and the reason I shared so many career options, is the area you're trying to get into is what will determine the level of tech experience that you need. If you guys get that, please let me know, because that's absolutely important for you guys to understand. Do you guys get that? You don't need to have a lot of tech experience or even any tech experience in order to get into all of these fields, right? Some of these fields don't need that. There are some fields like customer success, right? For tech, you don't need to be like you don't have to be a work in IT help desk or anything like that. So the area you're going into determines the skills that you need, and we'll be covering some of that a little bit more tomorrow, because that's all part of that job search strategy. All right. Let's see here. Faith, oh, you are very, very welcome. Thank you. Let's see here. So someone is asking, what are the best search engines? So that tells me you need to be here tomorrow. So if you're asking about, because that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. What part is more technical and less technical? Let's talk about that tomorrow. And someone said you're a hardcore biologist. Benedict, I think you're one of my students that you just joined. So let's talk about that more specifically in the program. I'll see you in class, okay? So that we can talk about how you can transfer your specific skills. And we can talk about that during our coaching calls, all right? And let's see here. I think that's really all I see here. So, okay, so it looks like we've answered all the questions. So we've done all the questions. So we've talked about joining for tomorrow. So again, if you guys are looking for me, you can find me online, www.youritcareer.com. I'm on Instagram, your_IT_career, or right here on this YouTube channel. So if you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe or consider subscribing so that you get notified of future live sessions or future trainings that I do. So thank you guys for joining me here today. So let me know in the chat. Hopefully you guys learned something here today. I really enjoyed teaching you guys here today. And I want to see you tomorrow, where we'll talk about the strategies for you to apply during your job search process. All right. So, okay. Oh, so okay. So yes, I know my channel. Some people find me on the channel and they're like, my God, I wish I'd found your channel first. But hey, you found me now and you're learning now. So that's what all that matters. So wherever you've been, that's okay. But where you are now, you know more. So therefore you can change the future. You can change the trajectory and make sure that you've set yourself up for success. All right. So thank you everybody for joining me here today. I am so glad you guys joined me. This was my my first live YouTube video. So I'm so excited this ended up working out. And if you guys have any questions, you can put it in the chat and we'll take a look at it later on after the video has finished processing. And like I said, so remember, you want to keep joining because we're taking a look and we're kind of recording the people that are active, because we're going to have opportunities for hot seat coaching. So what do I mean by that? We're going to select a couple of people, right? Or maybe a handful of people, and we're going to bring them into the studio. So right now you guys can just chat, but we'll actually bring a couple of people into the studio, or maybe we'll just ask them for their questions ahead of time, and we'll be able to do hot seat coaching for them to kind of just help them navigate some of the areas maybe they're having challenges. Now, they're not skills training calls, but they're coaching calls to help people see what areas they may need to work on as they're going with their tech career transition. So make sure you keep joining for that. So thank you all again for joining me here today, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Check your emails. Oh, sorry. Check your emails. So the workbook you got today was for day 1. So tomorrow you'll get the workbook for day 2 as well. All right. Thank you guys, and you guys have a great rest of your day. Bye.